So as we move over into the section about activities, I want to underscore the fact that learning takes place best when the entire body is engaged, not just the mind, but also the fingers, the toes, the heart. And so part of the synodal process that we are entering into is not just about getting young people to answer questions. First and foremost, young people have to know what synodality is. If they're going to be a part of this church, and synodality is what we're talking about, they too deserve an opportunity to understand what is being explained to all of us. And so the idea of engaging young people for the synodal process is not just about getting them together and answer a bunch of questions. To that end, a number of commissions have come together to be able to identify activities that can be done for and with young people. First, we're going to go through the gathered activities. Just a quick reminder, when we say gathered activities, we are talking about opportunities in which you are going to congregate either virtually or in person a number of young people to have or do something in particular. We are well aware that the pandemic has diminished our capacity for congregating, but we also want to show you how some activities could be done in person with all the protocols maintained. So let's talk about activities to explain the synod and that can be used side by side with the reflective process. First off, we want to talk to you about a little activity we call walking together. Walking together is an activity that can be done before Mass, after Mass, or in small groups when young people visit the location, the church location itself. The idea behind it is you're going to get a group of 10, at least 10 young people to make it the most beneficial. And you're going to give them the task of walking from the entrance of the church to the sanctuary of the church. But there are a couple caveats thrown in here. So think of this very much like Simon Says or Marco Polo. Some of the young people are going to be blindfolded. Some of the young people will not be able to speak, and only a few of them can be designated as leaders. Maintaining all the protocols of distancing and so on, the goal is to get everybody to walk from the entrance of the church to the sanctuary, and they must all bow at the sanctuary together. This is going to cause a lot of fun chaos because it's going to take them a while to figure out how to actually get from one place to another when some of them can't speak and some of them can't see. When we remove the capacity for particular senses and for communication, it helps to mirror the complexity of a church trying to move together when people are not always on the same page. It would be very easy for everybody just to not be blindfolded and be able to speak. They could all organize themselves. But goal is, because we are at different places in our process, how do we get to the sanctuary, which represents heaven, all together in a way that does not end up with us getting into too much chaos, too much quarreling, and too much bickering and biting at each other. So that's the first activity, if you can pull off an in-person activity. In a particular way, I want to thank the altar servers at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception, who actually helped us develop this exercise. They were so kind to be able to share this when they were on retreat in December of 2021. And so we were able to film them doing the activity together. When you receive the package with this PowerPoint presentation, you will see the video of them actually trying to figure out how to get to the sanctuary together. So look forward to that when we send you the rest of these resources. The next option we have is both an in-person and a virtual activity. This can be done in a small group of young people, particularly children, or it can be done online via Zoom, depending on the type of group you have. The idea, again, goes to drawing together. So I don't know if we would have time to try it, but maybe one of these days we should try it in the office or try it with Carissa and Rondell. Essentially, what is required would be a Zoom platform and several breakout rooms made. You're going to have a couple young people who are going to be identified as leaders. They are going to stay in the main room, and everybody else is going to end up in breakout rooms. There's going to be one main leader, just one main leader. And that person is going to explain to the best of their ability something. They're going to explain a beautiful thing they saw. They're going to describe something. They're going to describe it to those other leaders who are in the main room. And those other leaders are going to be dispatched to the breakout rooms. The trick is the leaders who are dispatched to the main rooms cannot tell the young people in the breakout rooms what the exact thing was described. So, for example, if I was the main person with the idea and I said the most beautiful thing I ever saw, and I described it as a beautiful house, the young people who go into the breakout room cannot say that it is a house. They have to describe it to the best of their ability without identifying that we are talking about a house. So they can say, draw a line straight and then draw lines across, but they can't say things like window, they can't say door. They have to just simply describe to the best of their ability the lines and forms that make up the idea of this house. What will then happen is everybody will get back together and there's going to be an opportunity to compare notes. Who did what best, and did you recognize that what was being explained was what was originally intended? So that is a way that we can all talk about what does it mean to have a vision to move us forward as people, but we have to pass on the information from one person to another and the difficulty that comes from us figuring out what these things are. So this is an activity, particularly if you have groups of young people who are into drawing and into art and visual things. This is very good. Now, even if you have young people who can't draw, it's kind of funny when you get them together and they're not too sure how they could draw. It's an opportunity for them to test themselves and also to have fun. It's just a funny activity that you can debrief in many different ways related to synodality. Last but not least, we have a board game. I particularly want to thank the Diocese of Roseau for sharing with us this board game, because this board game basically answers the synod questions. For this board game, you can use it on Zoom, or you can actually just print out a piece of paper and use it with a small group of young people. So a group of 5, because as he said, maintain social distancing. You're going to need for somebody who's the facilitator, and you're going to need somebody who's the scribe and somebody who's the listener if you are doing this via Zoom. You won't need as many persons if you are working this in person, but you will definitely need a scribe. So we're going to show you what the board game looks like. So just like snakes and ladders, you're going to move across the board trying to get to the center where you see the synod is. And each square has a particular thing that they must do. Now, I don't know if y'all could recognize, Rhonda, look, Carissa, are you seeing the different birds on the board game?
Yes.
Do you know what those birds are? I know you must know what these birds are.
Yes, it's colotypus on the cuckoo.
Very good. But there's something a little more tricky. Rondell, you seeing the picture on the board game?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
It's Mount St. Benedict.
St. Benedict, yeah.
And whenever you end up on Mount St. Benedict, you have to skip one turn. You think you could tell me why we want you to skip one turn when you go to Mount St. Benedict?
I will make a very strong guess and say it's a time to pause and reflect.
Excellent.
Is that the correct answer?
It is, because you go on retreat, you take a moment, you take a pause. So whenever you end up on particular tiles, you have to do certain things. So there's a bridge, the scarlet ibis sends you back to start, the cuckoo moves you forward, dice has you roll again, and the bridge moves you one forward. And as we mentioned, Mount St. Benedict puts you on a one-turn retreat. So this is also a fun way in which you could ask your young people the synod questions. But please note you have to have a scribe for the process, because they're not just answering for the sake of answering. They're answering and you have to scribe the responses as a part of your wider parish process. Now, another way we could be engaging in all of this is the use of multimedia, specifically of videos. We will also be able to provide you links to particular videos that are very helpful in describing synod process. So before you even engage your young people with answering the questions, they are meant to understand the synod process. So any video that you find on the road to Amias or the Exodus story is very helpful in discussing this idea of journeying together. Also, another helpful item that you can do is actually using the Synod logo to discuss what the logo means and how the Synod logo embodies all of the spirit and understanding of walking together as church. Now, the non-gathered activities, many of them you may want to create for yourself or you may want to engage with yourself. As I mentioned before, non-gathered activities are any activity that prioritizes the action of the leader towards the young person. What does that mean? This does not require you to bring young people together. It simply requires you to find young people wherever they are with whatever means possible. So you can potentially create non-gathered activities that only require the young person to engage in their home space. That means you could create family engagement activities, talk to your family life unit in the parish and see what ways they are creating that a young person can engage in synodal discussions in their home. Leader interviews would be if you as a leader engage with young person, particularly those who are more so on the fringe of what we do or are not Catholic altogether, you may feel motivated to have a discussion with them. And there is a potential for them to do an online survey, an Archdiocesan survey to provide their answers. So you could engage them personally and then send them the survey. There are different forms of creative expression that are circulating the diocese. You will see the opportunity to do a creative piece, an art piece, and there's also the opportunity to do some essays. Speaking of essays, schools and parishes can also consider giving young people the whole questions. This would obviously be for a slightly older age group, and letting them answer the questions as testimonials or as an essay question. This is particularly good for a group like a confirmation class. Last but not least, there is digital content and digital feedback. This is a particularly difficult area to address because there are lots of stipulations around adolescents using social media, and we want to be respectful of their family considerations regarding social media. But there are opportunities if discussed with the Synod team. Lastly, when it comes to social media engagement, we want to identify the fact that there are stipulations around what should be circulated on social media related to the Synod. Please check with your Synod team or your parish office for the media kit that has been circulated by CAMSEL so you can be made aware of how Synod information should be represented in broader digital spaces.
We would like to pause once again just to reflect on this activity section. What do you think? Will the use of activities assist you in explaining the concept of synodality to children and adolescents? Does your parish have the capacity to use any of these exercises? Finally, this list is by no means exhaustive. Can you think of or create any other activities to help you explore synodality?